Hello and welcome to Building Solid Foundations Radio. I'm your host, Steve Matley. We're coming to you on KCAA Radio out of Redlands and all of Southern California. You can also catch us on the Building Solid Foundations channel on Roku, coming soon to Amazon Fire TV. We're on your favorite podcast platform, or you can catch us on YouTube. Today, we're going to be talking about real estate from the beginning to the end: acquisition, entitlement, design, construction, property management, the whole enchilada. My guest today is Ron Sutliff. Ron Sutliff and I are actually cohorts at New School of Architecture and Design, where we both work as instructors. Ron's background: he is a graduate of the Keller Graduate School in project management. He is recently retired as managing director for Cushman Wakefield Project Development Services, one of the nation's largest property development and management companies. He is a former owner of San Diego Project Management Services, has over $1 billion of construction projects built, over 15 million square feet. He is a board member of Homemade, former Construction Management Advisory Board member, and is a lead AP. I'll let him explain what that means as we talk a little further on. Ron, welcome to Building Solid Foundations.
Thank you for having me, Steve. I look forward to your conversation.
All right, so Ron, let's get a little background. I kind of teased a little bit. You know pretty much everything from beginning to end. And on this show, we talk about a lot of things, but real estate as a topic seems to get more of its fair share than anything else, because that's kind of what I know.
Yeah.
And that's the people I know. You come out of a unique end of real estate where you are in the development, construction, and property management, all of it. So kind of explain what that process, first of all, what's your background? How did you get into this? Why this instead of, I don't know, NASCAR racing or being a dairy person or something?
Well, actually, both of those sound interesting. But I have always wanted to be an architect. When I was in elementary school, I wanted to be an architect. And when I graduated from high school, I went into to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo with that idea of being an architect. One of the things, however, that made it a little challenging for me was realizing that architects like to sit and draw, and I have a little bit of ADD, and so I like to walk around and whatnot. So I converted my major into construction engineering halfway through Cal Poly. Okay. And ever since then, construction has been my background and my love. And So before I actually got into the brokerage world, I worked for actually three large national general contractors, building all commercial stuff from healthcare to life sciences to manufacturing, all kinds of stuff. I've had a very fortunate career in and around Southern California, as well as up into Vancouver and Chicago.
Okay, great. And so it's very similar to me, because when I was a kid, I always wanted to be an architect too. I loved buildings. I loved the design. I used to play with my little, they didn't have erector sets. For some reason, there was a void for a time where they didn't have erector sets, but they had these things where they had the little plastic I-beams and
columns
exactly what
and
you're
a little
panel
about.
system.
Yeah.
I used to build and design these elaborate buildings and that kind of stuff. Lincoln logs and before they had Legos, they had play school bricks.
Yeah.
Used to play with build things. I loved building things out, right? And I always thought maybe I should, man, I should have gone to architecture. I probably should have really pursued that. The more I learn about what architects actually do, the more grateful I am I didn't go into that, because as you said, the architecture, kind of the same way I did really well at accounting in school, but God forbid I do that for a living. I cannot sit in a cube. I cannot sit in a cube and do the same thing every day and stare at a computer screen or do whatever. I'm like you. I have to be out and around. And I love the environment of a construction site. The smells, the sounds, the eating off the roach coach, all the stuff that you do.
It's kind of interesting, because I was debating on whether to stay at Cal Poly. The first 2 years of architectural design are exactly the same 2 years of construction engineering or landscape architect or civil engineering. They're all exactly the same classes and everything. So
a lot of the gen eds are in there too, right?
A lot of the gen eds were in there.
And then the basics of design and
exactly. And we had a lot of structural classes as well that were kind of somewhat similar. But I remember going to a field trip to San Francisco halfway through the first year, and actually halfway through my second year. And we were visiting Bechtel's office. They actually had two high-rise buildings in downtown San Francisco. And while I was waiting for the rest of the class to show up, because we didn't go all drive together, we came by different cars, there was a construction project across the street and they were erecting structural steel. So I'm watching this, and everybody gets there and they say, okay, let's go. And I'm still standing there watching the structural steel, and they said, hey, Ron, we got to go. So I remember going up to about the 14th floor of Bechtel's offices. This is one of their architectural offices. And we met a guy at the foyer there, the person responsible for the architects, and he said, hey, do you want to see where everybody works? And of course we said, yeah. They opened the door, and here's about 15,000 square feet of little tiny cubicles with people bent over on their drafting tables. Back then everything was by hand.
Yeah. T-squares and triangles.
Exactly right.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly right. And I look at this and I'm thinking of that construction site and I go, no, I don't not want to do this the rest of my life.
Yeah, exactly.
So I went back downstairs after the tour was over, and they had to pull me away from that construction project. And ever since then, it's been that world.
When I was in, I think it was first or second grade, I lived in a tract of homes. I lived in Ventura, and they started building on the lots above us.
Ah, yes.
And every chance I'd go up there and just watch.
Oh, yeah.
Watch. And even today, I find myself, if I go by a construction site, I stop. Sure. I'm looking in the fence, and I'm that same little kid just fascinated by that. Even after all these years of having experience on the other side of the fence.
Exactly.
I love watching construction as being
well,
part
and there's so many senses that are going on, from, like you said, the smells and the sounds. And I remember when I graduated, I had 2 job offers, and one was working on the Alaskan pipeline. Okay. And the other was working at a hospital in San Diego. Well, I wanted to work on the Alaskan pipeline, but my wife said, there is no way we're going to Alaska. So, and being San Diego my hometown, I came down to San Diego. But my first job was working on a hospital, and they were just in foundation stage. It was a 10-story hospital, and then we were building a 9 or 11-story medical office building right next to it. Okay. And the project manager who was responsible for the project, the one that hired me, said that, we don't unfortunately have a spot for you right away in the trailer. Would you mind working outside in the field for a while? And so I said, yeah, what the heck? I'll learn some physical stuff. Well, for almost 7 months, I joined the local 89, which is the laborers union, and I dug trenches, and I was the dummy end of a survey chain. Back then it was pulling a chain rather than everything electronic. And I worked for a large labor foreman called Jonesy. And I stayed with Jonesy because he protected me. Back then it was a little rougher than it is today. The unions were strong, and so there was always tension on a project site. I loved it, and really enjoyed that.
Yeah, it's great. And I came out of the labor end myself, but that was I didn't work for an organized group. Just to get myself through school. Yeah. I worked construction in the daytime, and I ended up eventually getting my own contractor's license, doing more residential stuff out Coachella Valley area.
Yeah, sure.
Behind the gates of big clubs.
Yeah.
And but I started off just doing kind of handyman kind of work, just whatever I could get, and then worked in a restaurant at night because I could do that at night. It's work the 2 jobs and go to school at the same time.
Exactly,
sort of thing,
I know what you mean.
Yeah, because I didn't really have any grants or scholarships or loans or anything. I just kind of get myself through the best way I could. It was kind of the rough way to go. I don't recommend that, but it worked for me. But that's how I came up, was through the labor end of it. Yeah, and then. I didn't know that construction management was a degree. Nobody came to my career day and ever said that. Yeah. Never. Yeah. Nobody. Yeah. I knew what a contractor was. I knew what an engineer was. I thought I knew what an architect was. Yeah. I didn't know construction management was a thing, and so I took business. And because that's, business is what you take when you don't know what you're going to do. Right. So, and then I went into the business of construction. Yes. And that's what I did. And then I left, I got rid of my company, my contracting company, when I, by accident, ended up, a series of different accidents, ended up interviewing for a position at a construction management firm.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I didn't even know those things existed. And when I went in, the best interviews are the ones where not under pressure because you don't need or want or know anything about the job. I just kind of got, for some reason, scheduled for this thing.
Yeah.
And I don't remember how all that happened. I was like, okay, I'd never heard. I even had the wrong name of the company, And so I went in, and the more I talked to this guy, the more fascinated I was. I want to do that. That's how I get out of the residential, because I wanted to do the commercial
side. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I ended up talking myself into that position, and then went and kind of sold off, what I had in the business. I basically had other people I knew in the business. I'd give the contracts to them, say, finish all this stuff out.
Yeah.
Here's the bids I put in, just connect with them, take it over.
Yeah.
And then, contacted the clients that were pending and said, here, these people will be doing the work for you. They're good people.
Right.
I'm doing something else now.
Right.
And I got into that on a very low level. Even with a master's degree, I had a very low level project engineer position, and then worked my way up really fast. In construction, you work up quickly. If you show up and act like you're interested.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. You can move up very, very fast.
You can.
And I did that. And 8 years after that, I was in the home office, kind of just running things on my own, sort of thing. It was a great experience. I want to get more into kind of the next step of this. We have to take a short break. We come back, we're going to talk more with Ron Sutliff about his path and career going into this, and how he ended up being able to do every part of real estate, starting with the acquisition of real estate all the way up to the sale or the leasing and the rental of it. We're going to be right back. This is Building Solid Foundations Radio. I'm your host, Steve Matley. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back.
Fire Up Connect is the most innovative business networking group, supporting and collaborating with a dozen of small businesses that are interested in building and establishing strong business connections, hosting educational live seminars while carrying out business and community-driven projects, as well as marketing programs as a part of its membership program. Fire Up Connect also offers virtual assistance with a wide range of services, including inbound customer support, chat support, appointment setting and email management, graphic designing, video editing, web design and development, social media marketing, e-commerce solution, content writing, and much more. For more information, head on over to www.fireupconnect.com. Fire Up Connect, helping success stories unfold every day.
I love how New School is able to help me greatly with my career.
Because they actually have experience working in the field.
The greatest thing about New School is the fact that there are so many different disciplines, which allows you to really understand and get a good insight into different types of design. And I think it's that whole changing mindset of what design can really do for a city, and this is kind of the place to be.
This environment cultivates creative thinking.
Hi, this is Steve Matley. As a construction professional, I know the importance of selecting the right contractor for the job. Power Solar employs only professional installers. Power Solar will provide a knowledgeable consultant to help analyze your current electric bill, identify site placement, and correct solar technology for your home. Contact KCAA Producer at gmail.com for a free financial savings proposal with no obligation, or call 951-551-1350 and ask for Ken. Again, that's KCAA Producer at gmail.com or 951-551-1350 and ask for Ken. Hi, welcome back to Building Solid Foundations Radio. I'm your host, Steve Matley. Today we're talking with Ron Sutliff. Ron Sutliff is a many decades-long career in construction management, development, real estate. And Ron, before the break, we were talking about kind of the journey of going from what you thought you were going to do into something different, as you realized that what you thought you wanted to do was not a lifestyle or an environment that you wanted to spend your whole career doing, but there was another twist, and you went towards the construction engineering. Now, I assume that means construction management as a degree probably wasn't there yet, because that's a fairly recent degree field, but construction engineering has been there as an offshoot of the engineering trades.
Yes, at again, Cal Poly, where I was attending, construction engineering had a lot of engineering classes, a lot of structure classes, timber classes, concrete, steel. And the intention was that back then you could either go into construction or actually go into structural engineering.
Right, you become a licensed engineer.
Become a licensed engineer.
Right.
I believe Cal Poly changed the focus of that class about 6, 7 years after I graduated, and into specifically management of construction.
And it's a very new concept. As I mentioned, nobody came to my school to talk about that on career day. I
Right.
think because when I was in high school, it didn't exist. It would be like someone in the someone showing up to a school in the 1950s talking about website development.
Yep.
It didn't exist. Why?
Right.
So that's why nobody was there, right?
Exactly.
And it was an evolution. I know that when I first started with the CM firm, we were still in that phase where a lot of architects and builders didn't like CMs. They didn't want us. They thought it was an extra. Owners thought it was an extra expense, and architects and didn't thought it was someone taking fee away from them.
You bet.
And builders thought it was somebody that's showing up as a traffic cop.
Absolutely.
I don't need this person here.
Exactly.
As it evolved, all those groups eventually learned the value of it. I remember we were getting referred by contractors to the owners who realized, you know what, all this crap we're going through, we're managing the owner instead of managing the project. Let's get someone to manage the owner.
Exactly.
And that they brought the CM in.
Exactly.
Or it was the, we used to go into projects that were, I used to say the 911 call.
Yes.
The projects are going south fast.
Yes.
Funding's being pulled, red tagged,
Yep.
Whatever, way behind schedule, just a mess. Neighbors are at the city council screaming and yelling.
Yes.
And so we'd come in to basically turn the boat around, bail it out, and try to get to port, right?
Exactly.
And I loved that part of it. I loved that everything was a challenge. I loved that part of it. But now beyond that, you also got involved in other parts of it. You had part of the design management, right?
Yes.
Okay, so actually selecting architects and managing that process.
Yes.
So while you weren't an architect, you became the architect's boss.
Yes. Or I always call it coach.
The coach. Okay.
One of the challenges, as you said, construction has over the years has gotten very complex.
Oh, very much.
And part of the reason for it is that the time span of building things has gotten shorter.
While the technology and the complexity of the buildings has increased.
Absolutely. And the financial aspects of building have become very challenging, particularly because there's such a demand for housing, like tenant space, but the financial aspects of that are challenging because of real estate, depending on what city you're in. You are either a landlord captive and are subjugated to their rents,
Rent controls, right,
and
right, yeah.
that drives construction costs if you're trying to improve your space, or your startup company. Like San Diego is full of R&D, and so there's a lot of startup that don't have money to spend in real estate, but they have to.
That's right.
To be able to house whatever it is they're doing. So we found, and I had very similar experience. I remember very vividly. I was working for a general contractor. I was the operations manager. We were building three building complex for the city of Anaheim. We're building their office complex. We're building a parking structure, and we're building another building that they were going to lease out to Pacific Bell. And there was a construction manager on site. And we could never figure out what the guy did. He took our budgets and he put his logo on it. He took our schedules and put his logo on it. And he slowed the process down because we had to run things through him. And he didn't quite understand what was going on. And I realized that, there is a good spot for this if the process is done well. And so
there has to be very clearly defined roles.
It
responsibilities.
Does. It does.
Yeah.
And I ran into different kinds. There were construction managers that were very adversary, and they felt like they were doing their client a service by beating up on the team that they were managing, whether it was a contractor
I worked
or
on
architect.
one project like that, and that was the CM project manager's attitude and view. And I thought it was probably the most dysfunctional project I ever worked on.
It was, and it's very expensive for the client, and he doesn't realize it. They just, it's the saying, you don't know what you don't know. And a client that hires a construction manager has to be very careful that they're hiring somebody that's going to actually add value to the project, not detract from it. because he may not know, especially if the client doesn't have any experience.
Yeah, if they come in with the attitude, the CM comes with the attitude is my job is to protect the owner from these unscrupulous, dishonest contractors that are trying to cheat him.
Exactly.
Well, there may be some contractors out there like that. We all know there are.
Yes.
That's a very small minority.
Very small, and they don't last very long.
They don't last long. They weed themselves out,
exactly.
and they become unhireable.
Exactly. So I realized that as I was getting through my construction experience, the last position I held was a divisional officer for a national company, and I was getting a little bit tired of that and was looking for an opportunity. And a brokerage firm that had project management as part of their package reached out to me. And the first project I had as an opportunity to manage was a facility that became Motorola's San Diego headquarters. It was a 2-building complex, but we were in the process, the brokerage company was in the process of buying the land and then developing the land on behalf of, it was General Instrument, but became Motorola on their behalf. And General Instrument had, first off, no knowledge of how to build anything or develop anything, and they had really not the personnel to manage anything like this. So the brokerage firm was tasked with buying the land, developing the land, and then building the project for them. And that was my first project out of a general contracting, doing an overall thing. We were, I began to get involved in going to city planning meetings, and had no experience in doing this stuff. I'm from the contracting side. I don't know anything about this stuff.
You find out when you go from that side that when you were a contractor, what you thought was the start of the project is really about 2/3 the way through.
Exactly.
And by the time you show up, they're already running out of money.
Exactly. Yeah, that is so true. That is so true. So, but it was kind of neat, meeting with the mayor of San Diego and other lead people, the Congress people that were required or responsible for our territory, but working through planning, a total different world.
The entitlement process is very local and very political.
Oh my gosh!
It's because it's controlled by whatever the local agency is.
Exactly.
Right.
And what kind of development they want.
And one of the weird things I've learned is when you go to let's say a city, it's a local agency, right? A city, county, whatever. It's a city. There's not really the city. There's the city in what's the elected officials,
right?
Who have okay. Then there's the city, which are the people that work at the city. They're not elected. They're the bureaucrats. They're the employees.
Yes.
And they've seen the elected people come and go, and all the priorities change back and forth,
right.
And they just still do their job.
Right.
And then there's the city that is the community of citizens. Those three don't always line up.
Exactly.
And you could be doing exactly what you think you're supposed to be doing according to the city.
Yes. Yes.
And then the group of people that live in the city who are actually the city, they don't want it.
Yes.
Yeah.
We were fortunate in two ways. One, that the city was in a growth mode back then, and they were very interested in attracting new business. General Instrument or Motorola was that new business. They were bringing in employees who were going to be paying taxes and improving the infrastructure of the area. And so all of that was helpful at not having to fight planning as hard as we often do.
If you can go according to their desired plan, it's a lot easier.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a lot easier.
Well, and from my experience, I understand the permitting process and could guesstimate how long it takes to get a building permit. I had no idea how long it takes to get a development permit. It's like a whole different world.
Yeah. The difference between plan check and code checking really is what's going on the permitting side. The entitlement is a public hearing process, and it is everybody gets a say in what you do with their property, whether whether they're work with the city or they're just people who live around the area. And it's part the CEQA is the deal. They call it in California,
right.
NEPA nationally. But it can be contentious, but it is quite the task. And in California, it is longer, more arduous, more frustrating than pretty much any other place you go. There's probably maybe Manhattan might be as bad or something like that.
I'm sure, yeah.
And in California, because it's very local, cities like San Francisco, Los Angeles, and even here in San Diego, maybe Del Mar, other cities. There are some cities that are very more difficult because they're more picky about what goes in.
Sure.
And they've got their own ideas. And people underestimate the time, effort, and money that goes into that before you ever start building. We're going to take another break here. When we come back, we'll continue this conversation. This is Steve Matley. This is Building Solid Foundations Radio. I'm in the studio with Ron Sutliff, and we're talking about real estate development, construction, and design. We'll be right back after this short break.
Fire Up Connect is the most innovative business networking group, supporting and collaborating with a dozen of small businesses that are interested in building and establishing strong business connections. Hosting educational live seminars while carrying out business and community-driven projects, as well as marketing programs as a part of its membership program. Fire Up Connect also offers virtual assistance with a wide range of services including inbound customer support, chat support, appointment setting and email management, graphic designing, video editing, web design and development, social media marketing, e-commerce solution, content writing and much more. For more information, head on over to www.fireupconnect.com. Fire Up Connect, helping success stories unfold every day.
I love how New School is able to help me greatly with my career.
Because they actually have experience working in the field.
The greatest thing about New School is the fact that there are so many different disciplines, which allows you to really understand and get a good insight into different types of design. And I think it's that whole changing mindset of what design can really do for a city, and this is kind of the place to be.
This environment cultivates creative thinking.
Hi, this is Steve Matley. As a construction professional, I know the importance of selecting the right contractor for the job. Power Solar employs only professional installers. Power Solar will provide a knowledgeable consultant to help analyze your current electric bill, identify site placement, and correct solar technology for your home. Contact KCAA Producer at gmail.com for a free financial savings proposal with no obligation, or call 951-551-1350 and ask for Ken. Again, that's KCAA Producer at gmail.com or 951-551-1350 and ask for Ken. Welcome back to Building Solid Foundations Radio. This is Steve Matley, your host. I'm with Ron Sutliff. We're in the studio talking about real estate development, construction management. Ron, before the break, we were talking a little bit about the process of going through entitlement and leading up to the development, and kind of just how difficult it is and how most people really don't understand what goes into doing a building before they actually see the building go up. So if you're in the audience and you've ever driven by a place that has a sign up that says coming soon, and it seems like it's there forever and ever and ever and ever, and you're thinking, what is keeping these people? It's going through the process. Yeah. You go check your local planning commission calendar, city hall, see what's been filed. You'll find out that it takes a while. I've had projects that in the fastest jurisdictions in Southern California that take 2 to 3 years. I'm guessing in other areas probably 3, 5, 7 years. And if you're in coastal commission territory, you might want to bank about a decade or so to get everything approved. That sounds ridiculous, but it's the reality. Now, having said that, I do want to say I'm not opposed to the process in as much as I don't want a cannabis dispensary next to the grade school my kids go to, right? Right. I want to be able to say something about that.
Yes.
I don't want one of my neighbors to put in a movie theater next door, right? In a quiet neighborhood. Yeah. So there's reasons for it. Well, but it is arduous, probably more so than it needs to be.
Well, it's not only arduous, but it's not free.
Yes.
The expenses that the developer or the owner goes through to even get their entitlements is pretty significant.
Environmental engineers, civil engineers,
Traffic
soil engineers,
studies.
traffic, noise, cultural, biological.
And then architecture.
Yeah, yes.
There's a level of design that has to take place before
The site before you do the buildings.
exactly. So there is.
a
This
lot
is
of
why
fees.
it takes so long,
A lot of fees to get paid.
and a lot of fees.
And so where those fees go is to the roads and the street lights and the parks and all the stuff that's out there.
Right.
Those are impact fees.
And you know, the good news with this, as you were talking about, Steve, is that most of these development projects are fitting within the city master plan, so that they're not running amok at having these relationships of uses next door to one another.
That's right.
But every now and then there is that challenge when land gets tight and opportunities exist.
Or there's some things that aren't zoned for. If you want to put in a house of worship, there is no zoning for it. It's called a conditional use permit.
Exactly right.
Same with schools.
Yes, exactly right.
And the reason for that, I always looked at houses of worship and schools fit in this category that everybody likes to have them around and nobody wants them next to them.
Yes.
They are highly disruptive.
Yes,
And if you don't believe that, go try living next door to a high school.
Yeah.
And the traffic
Especially
and the noise
and the marching band.
Marching band, but every single day there's the drop off and the pickup fiasco.
Yeah.
Or when they have the fields being used by the soccer clubs on the Saturday and everybody's parked in front of your house and you can't have any guests over.
Right.
This is the reality of it.
Exactly.
Mega churches are kind of the same way.
Yeah, for sure. Well, for me, it was very fascinating. It was fascinating in the sense I'd never done this part of the project before, and it was a great learning curve and a great opportunity to learn. It set me up to have that experience in multiple buildings that we did, from the entitlements all the way through to development and building, and it was a great experience.
And I find there's very few people that actually understand and have experienced the process from the beginning to the end. Most people, it's an industry that's really about niche, right? They do just this part of just this segment of it.
Exactly.
Now, you got involved also in real estate acquisitions as well?
We did. I wasn't the actual broker that handled the acquisition. My role was auditing land. Auditing what's audited land, ensuring that there are not hazardous materials around.
Due diligence.
The utilities, existing utilities, easements that might be around the area, ensuring that the zoning is set up properly or is going to apply to whoever is going to be purchasing the property. I represented a healthcare organization in North County here that was looking to buy some land in Ramona, and we spent a great deal of time investigating the land, ensuring that, because there was some hazardous material issues that we had to deal with, but at the end of the day, they elected not to purchase the land because of they were afraid of zoning battles that was going to take place.
And that's a real thing.
It is a real thing.
And that's where, again, you find out that while the legal jurisdiction is in favor, the citizenry may not.
Right.
And that's where you can run into a lot of problems. And just because you're legally allowed to do something doesn't mean that's the battle you want to take on if the citizenry that lives there doesn't want it.
Exactly.
That's a very tough battle to win. Extremely expensive.
Right.
And you'll probably run out of money and patience before you ever get the project going.
The other interesting thing about that site is there was an underground plume of hazardous material coming out of some abandoned or older gas stations that were there. And the plume was not under this property, but after a lot of investigation, we found that the plume was headed in that direction. And so there were things that could be done to mitigate that, but they would have been super expensive. And so that was the other reason that they elected not to go forward with it.
Yeah, and just the dirt itself. I remember a project we did. It was equestrian homes up in Riverside County area, half-acre lots. And we had this whole thing figured out. It was going to be on septics because we didn't have right.
Yeah.
Well, after going through and there were some questions on the soils report, so we went back and did additional studies. And they came back and there were 6 lots that didn't perk well enough to do a septic tank.
Yep.
So you have to do seepage pits.
Yeah.
the difference in cost is phenomenal.
Yes.
Enough so that those 6 lots then justified having to put in a gravity sewer to a lift station and a force main back out to chase that a mile down the road to the next lift station. That's a huge expense.
A lot of dollars.
And yet that was less expensive than doing the seepage. No, those are things that, you know, in your initial soils report, if you'd have caught that, you probably would have passed on the property altogether and said, forget it. Right. And there's just all these little small moving parts and pieces to this thing, and a lot of things that can go wrong, and there's no way to know it all.
And in order to be of value to your client during or yourself during that development side, is understand all of the issues. What are the costs that relate to all these issues, so that you can make an intelligent decision.
And understand that as we go through the process, we might find something we didn't know.
Absolutely.
There's the unforeseen condition.
Absolutely.
And you know, a soils report, they take certain samples, but you can't sample the entire area.
Right.
You can't sample 5 acres of land or whatever and get every bit of it. You do random samplings.
Exactly.
And then when you go excavate, you realize that somebody buried a car into there, and that wasn't where they did the boring. So they didn't know that.
You didn't know that. Unlike the contractor who can claim unforeseen issues, the developer or owner cannot.
They can't. It's you do the best you can to figure these things out. And there's a lot of risk with it. So you did real estate, the entitlement, and then the development, and then the construction, and then you also did property management as well, right?
I didn't personally. Our firm did. Okay. We did both asset management and property management.
So your group would turn it over to the property management group.
Yes, and manage it. So one of the things we didn't mention is that besides the architectural aspects and engineering design and the construction aspect, there's also what we call furniture, fixtures, and equipment, or the FF&E side, which was another aspect that I didn't have any real background in when I got into development work. And that was very fascinating, from the furniture, all the aspects of furniture, to the low voltage systems like security and audio visual and data and network cabling, the move logistics, and all of these kinds of things, which were another world to me.
Yeah, see, when I went to CM, one of the things I was tasked with on one of my, not my first job, one of my early jobs, was the FF&E schedule.
Yes.
My job was to go through all the stuff, the specs and the plans, and extract everything that was out of contract, right?
Right.
Everything in what we call NIC, not contract. And then I had the other table, which related to that, and that was the OPA, owner purchase and allowances, right?
Yeah.
Owners purchase and allowances, and the FF&E schedule kind of fits within that framework, right?
Yep.
And I remember doing turnkey projects where we were actually going out and finding the furniture for the buildings, right?
Yep.
And having some of the furnishings custom fabricated, designed and fabricated.
Yeah.
It seems totally outside of what I should be doing as a CM. That's an interior designer's job, right?
Right.
But it was tasked to us. And so what do? I go find a good interior designer that says, I need this. Yeah, and this was there was a public agency that had a 13-member board, and they wanted a horseshoe meeting table for the public hearings that could be broken up and stored off to the side so they could use it as a multi-purpose room. And we had to design a closet that would fit all of it, right? But all of it had to be also wired so it all linked together. Microphones, lights, computer hookups.
And it's very technical.
Very technical, and it was quite the process to hook all that in.
This is one of the reasons that we called ourselves project managers as opposed to construction managers.
Yes.
Because we were involved in the pre-design, design phase, construction phase, but then the FF&E phase, as you're describing, we were heavily involved in writing specs, in bidding it out on behalf of the clients, managing all that work, because general contractors didn't want anything to do with that.
We were doing move management.
And move management.
Everything, Yeah, we're going to take another break. When we get back, I want to kind of wrap up talking about a little of where you are now and what you're doing, kind of post-major career. But you don't ever really retire from this business. You just find a different niche to go into,
That's
right?
for sure.
This is Building Solid Foundations Radio. I'm Steve Matley, your host. We're talking to Ron Sutliff today. We'll be right back after this message.
Fire Up Connect is the most innovative business networking group, supporting and collaborating with a dozen of small businesses that are interested in building and establishing strong business connections. Hosting educational live seminars while carrying out business and community-driven projects, as well as marketing programs as a part of its membership program. FireUp Connect also offers virtual assistance with a wide range of services including inbound customer support, chat support, appointment setting and email management, graphic designing, video editing, web design and development, social media marketing, e-commerce solution, content writing and much more. For more information, head on over to www.fireupconnect.com. FireUp Connect, helping success stories unfold every day.
I love how New School is able to help me greatly with my career.
Because they actually have experience working in the field.
The greatest thing about New School is the fact that there are so many different disciplines, which allows you to really understand and get a good insight into different types of design. I think it's that whole changing mindset of what design can really do for a city, and this is kind of the place to be.
This environment cultivates creative thinking.
Hi, this is Steve Matley. As a construction professional, I know the importance of selecting the right contractor for the job. Power Solar employs only professional installers. Power Solar will provide a knowledgeable consultant to help analyze your current electric bill, identify site placement, and correct solar technology for your home. Contact KCAA Producer at gmail.com for a free financial savings proposal with no obligation, or call 951-551-1350 and ask for Ken. Again, that's KCAA Producer at gmail.com or 951-551-1350 and ask for Ken. Welcome back to Building Solid Foundations Radio. I'm your host, Steve Matley. Today we're talking to Ron Sutliff, and we've been talking about the process of going from a piece of land to a fully functioning structure that is producing income, the whole process of acquisition, entitlement, development, construction, property management. And Ron, I know your career, you covered all that stuff, but now you've made a shift and you're still in the business, but you're in a different business.
Yes.
So tell us what you're up to these days.
Well, having retired, I was hoping that I might actually have more time to do things that I enjoy, but it doesn't seem to be the case. It's kind of interesting. Aside from co-teaching with you, actually teaching under your direction at New School, I teach, I think, 6 classes that I really enjoy with, and usually 2 classes a quarter. So
That's right.
It works out really well for me. I am currently still on 2 boards. I'm on Mission to Children Board, which is an organization that focuses on at-risk kids internationally.
Okay.
And I'm actually the chairman of the board and very active in that program, as well as I'm doing a pro bono project for under Homemade, for a not-for-profit that is developing a school, or actually has a school, but we're doing a new campus for them, for autistic children and other children with learning disabilities, severe learning disabilities.
That's fascinating. Because I always thought of Homemade as doing houses, but
Yes.
but they're doing the school too. That's great.
So Homemade internationally or nationally has, each city has their own makeup. The largest and the founding Homemade organization is in Orange County. Mm-hmm. And the focus was all about homelessness.
That's right.
And same in San Diego, it's about homelessness. But because San Diego's homeless physical shelters are not as large or expansive, we don't have that same opportunity. So what we have in San Diego focused on is not just homelessness, but preventative homelessness.
Okay.
And so I'm working with a company called Terry. They're located in Oceanside. They have about 500 to 600 kids that they work with right now with a huge backlog or a waiting list. And so we're building a 9-building campus for them in San Marcos that's of various aspects of schools, anywhere from classrooms. There's 3 classroom buildings. There's a vocational building where they work with developing plants and food. There's a farm on site where they grow their own. We'll have a sports facility with an Olympic swimming pool and gymnasium and whatnot. Where our next two buildings are arts buildings. One has a theater in it, and the other has classrooms again for woodworking and painting and all these kinds of stuff. And then there's an equestrian center on site. And so that equestrian center exists today. It was the first building that was actually built. And apparently horses have a very calming influence on these kinds of kids. So I love the organization. I love what they're doing. It's my heartbeat of working with kids. As I mentioned, I'm on the board with Mission to Children. So it just kind of reinforces what I do. I also do a lot of teaching at our church, teach a lot of the adult classes there. Biblical studies has always been my hobby, I guess. I went to a one-year Bible college right out of high school in England, which was a great experience, and I'm in the Bible very regularly and love studying it. So that's my that takes up almost my entire life.
And that's what I say. You don't really retire. You just find that you can now do a lot of things that you wanted to do that aren't necessarily tied to I have to get the compensation.
Exactly.
Because you've got the retirement you built up.
Yes.
And I'm personally not a fan of retirement per se. I think that's one of the worst one of the worst myths that were ever foisted upon us. The human animal was not designed to sit around and do nothing. It was designed to think, to plan, to envision, to physically do things, and it's designed to work with other people.
Well, and I'm very fortunate in that I'm still fairly healthy, and so I like being out and meeting people and doing things. So
and I know one of the classes you teach for us is the lead. It tends to be a very popular class for CM and non-CM students, and that's the sustainable building, the green building, which is obviously very trendy now, but it's not just trendy. It's a smart way to build. Honestly, it's really a good stewardship of the resources we have.
Exactly. Yeah. I created the class, and I looked at it from a holistic standpoint. I've been teaching this class for almost 10 years now, and originally there was a big swell in green building, but to describe green building, you've got all kinds of definitions.
That's right.
Like you, I felt like green building was to focus on energy savings, environmental minimization of pollution, and to encourage thinking beyond just tomorrow in terms of the resources that we have. The biggest part of that surprises people when I talk about it, but it's the electrical and mechanical and plumbing systems of a building that really have the most significant impact in either a positive or negative environment. That's right. The architects focus on just materials and the internal aspects of a building, and that's good.
Those kind of things,
it's good, but it's not where really the long term.
It goes to the mechanical and electrical engineers.
It does.
That's where it really ends up.
It does. So we focus on California requirements, mandated requirements like Title 24. And we then spend half the course on understanding what leadership in energy and environmental design is, and how to get your LEED AP license.
Right, which is very helpful. So we're going to have to wrap all this up. So Ron, I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. The thing is, Ron and I work together at school, but we don't get a chance to talk to each other all that much because we're in opposite schedules, different classes, and those kind of things. So Ron Sutliff, he is now retired as a construction manager, project manager, program manager, all that, and development manager. This is Building Solid Foundations Radio. Tune in every Thursday, 3 p.m., 1050 a.m., 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM. You never know who's going to show up or what they're going to share with us. I'm Steve Matley, your host. We will see you next week. And between now and then, go do something new and unusual.
The other stations claim to be